Welcome to episode 83 of Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining us. We just wrapped up with Stargate film composer David Arnold, and we are moving along to Stargate prosthetics artist Todd Masters of MastersFX. We have a lot to go over because, so much of what Stargate is about bringing the aliens to life. And not every alien can be done with a visual effect. And, there are sci-fi stories where our characters age and all kinds of things. There's some interesting avenues to discuss. But before we get into that, I would just like to invite you. If you are a fan of Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. I know it's one of those things that all the YouTubers say, but it really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And this is key if you plan on watching live, because these talent, particularly in Canada, are working again. And so, last minute changes happen all the time. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on the gateworld.net YouTube channel. So this is a live show. Todd is with us live as the live shows go under normal circumstances. And this is a normal circumstance. I will have my run of questions for him. And as that is going on, the moderators in youtube.com/dialthegates comments thread and live chat will be taking your questions for Todd as we go along. Todd Masters, prosthetic makeup artist and head of MastersFX, founder. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. How are things going in Vancouver? You say you are busy.
Yeah, I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. We have a studio here in Burnaby, and we have another studio in Toronto, actually. And yeah, we've been extremely busy, pretty much for the last year solid.
Wow.
We were in lockdown, I think, with the rest of the world for a while. Came back in June, and jumped right into a big zombie series for sci-fi. And DC's Legends of Tomorrow, which actually premieres tonight.
All right.
Yeah, and a good doctor and a bunch of features, and yeah, it hasn't been boring lately.
Wow. Todd, how did you fall into this? I didn't realize it until you sent me some pictures, but it's like you go all the way back to the 90s. I am privileged to have one of your Borg from Star Trek First Contact looming over my bed at night. And the makeup for that, the fabrication for these creatures that you guys create. How did you get? Hey, look at that right there. Pull it up once again. I didn't get the full thing.
Yeah, there you go.
See,
this is the Island Visual Effects crew shirt for Star Trek.
Wow. And you know what? That's holding up much better than my Borg is. That shirt looks good.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised. I just found it. I'm like, oh shit.
Hey, there you go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How did you fall in love with this stuff?
Totally. I actually go back to the 80s.
Okay.
I started in I started in Hollywood around 85, and like doing Big Trouble in Little China and Poltergeist 2, and Night of the Creeps. Like every Monster Maker kid, we kind of just go, I shouldn't say everyone, but in those days, if you wanted to have a career in this weird niche of business, you really had to be in Southern California. And so I was 18, and I had not received any art school welcomes. There was like one art school that was welcoming me if I paid enough money. And then there was another one in Seattle that I went to for like a day. But I wasn't really, cut out for going to art college, I don't think. I had already started actually in film opticals and animation when I was 12. So I already had, I was really young when I started. And so I had already had like a couple of films under my belt. This is, living with my parents in Seattle. I'd already actually worked on Empire Strikes Back at that time.
Oh my God.
There was a small film lab called Alpha Cine in Seattle that I started interning with, and this film came in that was horizontal, because it was VistaVision, and it was like a blue screen snow speeder. And I look at my boss, I'm like, what is this movie? And he goes, oh, that's Star Wars 2. And I'm like, what? And I realized that the lab had actually ended up processing a lot of the Industrial Light and Magic film. And so we were doing some cleanup work on some of these elements.
Only the best sequence in all of motion picture cinema, in my humble opinion.
I would agree with that.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
I mean, that Empire is it's just unbelievable, that movie.
Yes.
But when I turned 18 and didn't get accepted to any of these art schools, I kind of took this weird little, these abilities that I already done. I worked in film effects and optical effects, and I started making my own monsters in my folks' basement. And I had made some contacts with people in LA, and they were all like, well, if you were here, I'd hire you. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to move there. And just went there. And, like the day after I arrived, I started working on Big Trouble in Little China. And did a bunch of stuff for Boss Films, and then, like I mentioned, the Creeps. And then in 1987, I started my own company, which eventually became MastersFX. And we're going to be 35 years old next year.
Wow,
can you believe that? So
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It feels like it's been one long day. It's been a really crazy 35 years.
Depending on how you look at it, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. It's been very, very busy. It's a strange business because you're asked to do quite a bit, particularly in the practical effects side, always under schedules and always under budget. So
absolutely,
the fact that we survived this long even blows me away.
What movies and television made you fall in love with this?
Into the business. Well, I was a big Ray Harryhausen fan. I love that stuff. Star Wars, of course, came out when I was young and just blown away by that movie. So many artists, really impressed me of those eras that, because they didn't just do one thing. They did painting, they did sculpting, they did animating, they did filmmaking. And so I was really impressed by people that could pull that off. And I kind of thought that's what Hollywood was all about. But by the time I arrived, I arrived and started working immediately with Boss Films Company, which was Richard Edlund's company. And, things were very departmentalized, and I still managed to kind of get my fingers on a lot of different aspects of things, because that's kind of what I thought what it was about, especially as I kind of grew into the industry, working on the movies. So I really, looked at those folks for inspiration on how to kind of develop into this next generation of practical effects and makeup effects and visual effects and all that stuff. So, I mean, we still keep people in mind like Jim Danforth or Ray Harryhausen or Rick Baker, these people that really did more than just icons. And they did it because they were so diverse in their skills and talents, and they could do all sorts of arts, from making beautiful paintings to really amazing film moments. And so that was really what got me excited about filmmaking. It wasn't really like I wanted to make the best rubber nose, or I wanted to, it wasn't really like that. I've always enjoyed making things, but I was really about the filmmaking and trying to come up with stuff that people hadn't seen before.
Of course, you want to create something new and different, but sooner or later, Todd, they are going to need a rubber nose.
Oh yeah, well, I'm not discounting rubber noses. I mean, we still love doing rubber noses, but I just wanted our studios to be a place that you could, not just be limited by,
right.
You got to do it with rubbing a couple pixels together, or
exactly.
You got to have, because a lot of studios I've noticed don't really diversify, which I always think is kind of weird, especially in these days of visual effects and practical effects mixing so much. You really, it's cool to know a lot of different tricks, so you can do that stuff. You can design effects with a lot of points of knowledge.
So at MastersFX, it's not just prosthetics. You also do digital. Do you also do digital composite work?
Yeah. We've done quite a bit of practice into mixing practical and digital effects together. I don't know too many houses that do it like the way we've done it, where we really try to kind of like marry the two together. I tried to do this in optical effects when I was a kid at Alpacini place, working on an optical printer and all that. And it just, the desire was there, and, we could do split screens and stuff like that. But, until, a computer came along that really was designed for visual effects, where we can actually take, millions of colors and composite it.
Right.
That's where really this stuff came to life. And we've been exploring it ever since, and it's actually been a lot of fun. And I'm amazed that there's not other studios that have really kind of taken this on. To me, it would be like having a photography studio that doesn't have a retouch part of their division, of their business. You kind of need to have a little bit of both to make really
Correct.
cool and seamless effects these days.
Yeah, unless you're going to spend a great deal of time on the set getting it exactly fastidiously right, and if you're outside, good luck. Then I mean, you're going to need a Lightroom or some kind of application at the end of the day just to sweeten stuff up.
Yeah, compositing, or there's so many amazing tools now that and it's all. I mean, we could make movies on our laptops,
Exactly,
so
and reasonably
it's all
good.
Accessible. Yeah, and software these days pretty easy compared to what we used to have to deal with. And I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's a hell of a lot better than what it was, when we were making stuff on our Amigas and all that stuff in the 90s. So no, it's fun to be able to use other aspects, whether it's visual effects or whether it's prosthetics or other aspects of practical effects. I really like mixing it up. And I think the audiences like it too, because they don't get pulled out and go, oh, what an obvious effect. That's like the worst part of this, is you don't want to design things that are so obvious to such an educated audience.
Well, you look at something like Terminator, the original Terminator, where you had when the T-101 rises from the fire, I mean, that's completely large, if not completely, a stop motion creature. It
is a stop motion creature for that shot.
For that shot, they have some close-ups on him, but
yeah, there's a puppet that they walk around with, but all that stuff is stop motion with rear projection for the most part.
And then
some miniature sets.
Terminator 2, Arnie's got the endoskeleton kind of on the outside of him, and then by Terminator 3, you've got the actor in makeup on one side, and then just green or blue on the other with some dots, and they've merged the technology. They're like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can have both. And that to me was just in 20 years was just an extraordinary leap.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how fast things change. So you really kind of have to keep on it. In fact, you have to be more than keeping on it. You have to create it. You have to come up with new ideas to stay ahead.
Absolutely. I was talking with you about having everything go to Blu-ray now and seeing everything in high definition. Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies. And in some of those shots with them in the future, when everyone's... They had to start somewhere, It's like, woof, they didn't see Blu-ray coming.
Well, yeah, and at the time, as I mentioned before we jumped on this, I saw that in the theaters, and I remember just being blown away by how good those age makeups were. And I still think they're quite an achievement.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was foam latex, it's not the new translucent materials we have. And it's, it was done at a time where, Dick Smith was still kind of reigning, and not a lot of people could do what Dick was doing. Dick Smith, world famous makeup artist, who really kind of helped develop prosthetics and prosthetic effects. And Ken Chase did the work on Back to the Future. And like I said, I mean, I thought it was just a breakthrough at the time. And like you said, it's just not designed. I mean, we shot on 35 millimeter film. We had big silver halides. We had all sorts of other ways to kind of mask the trick. And then of course high definition comes along, Blu-ray comes along, 4K comes along, and there's not much that you can really, it's kind of fun if you're an effects fan, because you can go back and really study these things. I mean, I love looking at like old matte paintings from older films, and you could really see the artistry that it required to pull it off. And nowadays maybe some of those matte paintings, even by the best, they're it's quite an artifice there. It's hard to get past, but you still can appreciate the talent that went into it. And nowadays it's it's not like hand painting a mat or the struggles that people had to deal with back then.
It's interesting because you can go from one project to the other. Like we were talking about Twister as well, and how when that show first came out, it was cutting absolutely cutting edge at the time.
Totally.
Everyone was blown away. Now we can look back at it and go, it holds up. That there, you know. But
Yeah,
then
here and there. Yeah.
you look at something like, and maybe it's because I just don't have the vocabulary for it, but like Jurassic Park. You know, that was one of the earlier films where there were complete CG creatures in that movie, and it still holds up. You know, I have a hard time looking at that and finding fault, which suggests to me that if you have the right people and if you have the right technology, you can pull anything off that can really last ages. I'm sure you look at it and see things that no one else would because you're looking at it with your eye.
Yeah, budget and schedule also needs to be added to that list because, you know, there's a lot of times where you just literally run out of time. I mean, there's just no way to get it completely perfect by the time it needs to go in front of camera.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that effects don't work. And it's not always, you know, there's always, you know, I think everybody knows the story of the shark in Jaws and the shark not working and all that.
Shark still looks fake.
It's a pretty, well, it does. Yeah. I mean, that was a big urethane and steel contraption, which was pretty amazing for the time. Yeah. Somehow the movie still works really well, in fact. But, you know, the shark actually was an amazing achievement of technology, and it did work. The problem is that it was in salt water and it all rusted.
Right.
And, you know, they kind of kept it in water and just let it sit there.
Jeez.
You know, so it was not in the best of conditions by the time they went to shoot it. So, you know, you can look at it like that's the effects fault, but, you know, I mean, it takes two to tango in these movies. And so the magic trick is only good if we can shoot it. You know?
That's true.
So it is a whole relationship with the whole production, and everybody needs to kind of climb on board to create all this stuff. However, it's nice when you can just, you know, blame the effects guys, I guess.
Right. Effects guy over here. We hear that.
Well, it's, you know what I mean. So, I mean,
of course.
Particularly with practical effects, you know, it's always been interesting to try to do practical effects on a schedule. You're essentially creating a magic trick to performed in front of one eyeball, you know, the camera, usually repeatedly. You know, you want to have something that you could repeat for take 2 and 3, but it's, you know, it's tricky, and some things just don't work sometimes. We've been fortunate that we haven't had much of those troubles. Most of our stuff is usually pretty solid. But, you know, when it isn't, it's usually, you know, the clamoring of schedule and budgets and, you know, other things. It's not usually like, you know, one of my effects guys fucked up. It's usually just all the other elements.
What are some of the things that you have achieved over the years that you are most proud of?
Wow. I'm really proud that and go. Yeah, I did not prepare a speech. I'm proud of our team. We have a really great team in both shops, Toronto and Vancouver. And it's some of them just blow me away on a daily basis. They're so good. I should say many of them are like that. So I'm really proud of our studios and the fact that we're going to be 35 next year. I don't know any studio that's really pulled that one off. So that's pretty cool. I think Rick Baker actually did 42 years, I think was his. And maybe there was somebody else, but I mean, any of our companies that make it past 10 years, you know, these kind of prosthetic companies amaze me. The fact that we've been around for, you know, 3.5 decades is mind boggling. So I'm proud for that. And, you know, I'm proud that people are starting to kind of look at our stuff like, we've got classics, you know, we've done the classics, which is really funny. You know, it's like I was hip and then I was classic. I think that's like a code for something. Anyway, but no, it's I hate picking off projects. I mean, we've done so many cool projects that, you know, certainly aren't the responsibility solely of ours. Correct. It's when, you know, all these pieces kind of click together somehow, from, you know, effects to visual effects to our work to writer, director, actors. That's when things really sing. And I've been lucky to have a few of those where people. I was just on a Zoom last night for a show called After Midnight, that just came out in 2019. And it was the directors and the cinematographer, the writers and the producer. And I hadn't seen these guys since when we did it back in 2000. 18 and all that. And, you know, it was a little project, but those guys were really smart about it. They wrote a really good script, and they came to us in enough time with enough budget to do a decent monster. And it all worked together really well. It really didn't cost a huge amount. And that's a good example of a show that, you know, has the eye on the ball. They know what they're wanting to do. They didn't overachieve, and they certainly didn't underachieve. And it's a good little flick. So it's cool to be involved from, you know, things like that all the way to bigger shows that are kind of immense and you have less control over. But yeah, it's nice to still be around.
How did the relationship with Stargate SG-1 come about?
I'm a dual citizen, US and Canada. And I was starting to do more Canadian stuff at the time. So I guess this would be like mid 90s, maybe late 90s. And an old buddy of mine, Steve Johnson, was doing the work to begin with on Stargate. And then it was Dave Dupuis, I believe it was. And then there was a couple other local Vancouver folks that started to do Stargate stuff. And so I started kind of, you know, as I pushed, you know, more north into Vancouver, I started talking to him and explaining to him that I was, you know, coming into town, if there was anything we could help him out with. And so just by relations, we just started talking more about it. So when another season came along of Stargate SGI, they asked us if we would, I think the first thing might have been rebuilding Thor.
Revelations. That's right. To do a new Asgard model.
I think that was it, because Steve, his old company called XFX, and I think in Vancouver it was called Pacific Northwest Effects or something like that. They had made the initial Thor, but it was really like only from waist up, and it you know, they just kind of shot it and threw it in a box. So Thor just kind of lived in a coffin.
Began to deteriorate. Yep.
Yeah, I had some trouble, so we took it on as a new project, and as that kind of happened, they were excited to kind of see us do more work. And since we were in Vancouver at that point, it was easier for us to handle series work like that. And so we started doing some Unis, and we started doing some Prior, and we started just kind of, you know, building more and more stuff for the show.
The Super Soldier as well, if I'm remembering correctly.
Maybe.
Were you guys responsible for that? Yeah, in Evolution 1 and 2, the big Dan Payne's character in the black suit.
Oh, that's right. We might have had something to do on that. Okay. It's kind of, I'm sorry, my brain's getting foggy.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, we've done Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, you know, starting to blur together here. No offense to anybody, but I mean, you know, when you do series work like this, especially if it's heavy on the effects, it comes fast and furious, and you're prepping one episode while you're shooting another, while you're wrapping another. And you might even be prepping another episode that's got some bigger stuff down the line. So things just go, and you try to hang on as best as you can. And of course, you know, we're not a studio that just does one series. So even at that time, we were juggling a couple things. We were pretty small back then, but as things got busier and busier, you know, we got busier in Vancouver and LA at the time. And somehow, you know, we made it into Atlantis. We did all the Atlantis stuff, and I don't know when Atlantis wrapped, but that was kind of our last Stargate related thing, I think. All those Atlantis.
2009.
Series. Was it 2009?
Yeah.
Wow. So
yeah, they started going digital with any of the alien creatures because they were so far out there in the universe that there was no chance of anything really resembling human beings. So
perfect.
I may be picking your brain a little too deeply here. Can one of the most beloved characters in SG-1 and Atlantis, for that matter, were the Asgard, and Thor specifically. His redesign, the version that we really see to the end of the show in terms of that specific aesthetic and look, was in Revelations, and from his, you know, steel frame, which I imagine he had on I sold the prop years later, that he had on the inside, to that silicone on the outside and the veins and everything underneath. What goes into creating a character like him? Not only the character itself, but then the poles and the attachments and everything else that make him move. And then the radio controls for the face.
Yeah, they're really complicated. I mean, that comes from a really talented team. We have really good sculptors and mold makers and animatronics people on that. So it's really just getting a great team together, people that have had experience making things like this. It was kind of already designed, so we didn't have to necessarily like concept it. And we started with a sculpture and molded it, and then made a core, which is kind of let's just call it the skeleton form, and cast it out of intrinsic silicone, as you noted, and had some really cool armature stuff in there, as rod armature as well as radio controlled features, and I think the neck might have been a linkage. It's been a while. And just delicate work all the way, which is always tricky because I think that one we probably did in 5 weeks.
Wow.
No, I know, and it's kind of unbelievable. I think back to some of these schedules we've achieved and the work that's come out of it, and it kind of blows your mind sometimes. How did we do that? So, but Thor came together really nicely, and he operated pretty well for a long time. In fact, I don't even know if he ever broke down. It was a silicone skin that was all sealed in, so it would have been a really challenging thing to try to get in there and fix. But yeah, he seemed to be pretty well. He also ended up in a box, like a coffin, and they would just shove him in the storage.
Correct.
I always felt bad for him. I was like, okay, great episodes. See you later.
See you later. He had like this place to go. It was for those who don't know, he came with two coffins, quote unquote, of equal size. There were two black boxes, and if you open up the inner lining was like universe planets and everything else. It was kind of outrageous when really you think about it. One housed the puppet and the radio controls and some of the gear, and then the other one was all of the poles and all the accoutrements that kind of went with him. And Morris Chapdelaine talked about at one point, like practically flying with the puppet to some of these conventions in the United States.
Awesome.
And I was like, let's just get the puppet a ticket. He doesn't have to go onto the plane. He'll just sit right there with me. It's just
first class.
Absolutely. I have to wonder though, when he does break down, I'm sure you've left your business card with Stargate Productions so that they can. When you design something like that, are you contracted to come in, your team to come in and facilitate every time he's on camera, so that for like insurance purposes and whatever, if something breaks, then you guys can go and take it over? Or is it just like, here are the instructions, here's what you do with him, if something happens, call us and we will figure it out? How does that work? Is there a budget built in for that, for if he breaks down? What's it at play for a character like Thor?
Well, I think it really depends on the production's wishes. We encourage productions to hire our people for set work. So, if there is any issues, they know what's inside that thing and they can, get direct and deal with it. Some productions don't do that. And I usually don't accept things like this, where it's another group that's on set with it, because if things happen, they don't know what was built in there, and
correct.
They could change one thing that can alter another thing and just cause this like snowball effect. So that's pretty tricky. Usually our on-set people for a puppet like that are union puppeteers, like Morris was, and a few others we had on that team. And so they would be contracted directly by production, even though they had kind of worked out of our studios and had some familiarity with these things. And they would kind of be responsible for Thor, kind of like Thor's entourage in a way. And
right. He has a whole series of people, like any high-profile actor would.
Well, exactly. And I think that's what kept Thor going for so long, is that, there wasn't any issues because this team was aware of things that you don't try to do with Thor. I remember one of the directors came up, and I don't know where he found these like Red Baron Snoopy eye goggles, and he takes them up and he puts them on Thor and snaps them on, and we're all like, don't do that.
There's electronics.
Don't fuck with Thor.
Yeah, there's electronics just beneath the surface for his eyebrows and everything else. Yeah.
Oh my God. I didn't know the guy that well at the time, and I kind of went up to him and I said, you really can't do that. And he's like looking at me like, I'm the director, dude. And I'm like, okay.
Whoa.
Right. He was cool about it, but it was just kind of like getting to know you kind of thing.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
it's
and my
just,
first reaction is to laugh at it, and your reaction is you're freaking out. And
horrified.
it's like, you know what, that makes
That could be 2 weeks of fix there, or 3 weeks.
Oh
That
my
could really be
God.
a bad thing. So, our crew is usually like an army that protects the animatronics, and if they're not there, that it's tricky because what do you do? I mean, if they do have a trouble, we don't know what the people they hired did to it.
Yeah.
So it's always a tricky engagement, but that's why we like to have set people in.
Do you so there's no like warranty on him or anything like that? It's like we're building him to last, and this is, I'm sure, like, because you have union guys and everything, there are do's and don'ts, like don't snap some Snoopy aviator goggles on the puppet. That's bad. Don't want to do that.
We've added that to the contract now. Yeah, don't do that. I mean, we've been really fortunate. I mean, a lot of our practical stuff has always been really stout. Even on Falling Skies, I think we did a lot of animatronic characters on Falling Skies. Like every single episode seemed to have something. And I think we had one challenge when a motor burnout. Literally a motor inside of a skidder head caught fire. And you look over and there's a skidder with black smoke coming out of it. And we're like, so I mean, motors are gonna go. I mean, that's just part of animatronics. We fortunately have really good servo motors these days compared to the old days. But it does happen. I saw it once on Falling Skies. It was like the first burnt motor I'd seen in a long damn time. But that's again why you gotta have your set people there to be able to do it.
And Stargate
Huh?
was pretty good about that then? No.
Oh yeah,
no
Stargate was. Stargate was really smooth in that respect. I mean, the team on Stargate, the producing team, and the cast, and the directors that snapped goggles on things, they were all really great. I mean, we're all still really good friends these days. We still touch base, and it was kind of a really it was a moment in time. It was a lot of fun to be on that show because it was a really good vibe there.
From what I've seen of Falling Skies, a lot of the creature effects would have had to have been done outside. Everyone's on the ground, romping around, whereas a creature like an Asgard is going to be confined in a soundstage. You're going to have controlled conditions. The humidity level is going to be lower than in the out of doors, where it's always raining and everything else. So there's fewer opportunities for things to go wrong, I would imagine.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the elements certainly does kind of add an extra wrinkle to things, especially in Vancouver because it does rain and it's cold a lot. But again, that's the reason you want to have a team there to protect this, valuable asset and make sure it is ready to go. So that's kind of it.
The Unos makeup. So there was a creature that was featured in season 1, Thor's Hammer. Voiced by James Earl Jones. Were you involved in that one? When did you come in with the Unos? Did you come in for one of the later iterations?
I came in when Chaka
season
arrived.
4.
So what was that Beast of Burden, I think?
So this was the first ones. Peter DeLuise episode.
First ones. There you go. Peter DeLuise, one of my good buddies.
He's crazy.
Yeah. So, he's great.
He's great.
And crazy. So we had seen that makeup. I think that might have been a Dave Dupuis makeup. I'm trying to remember who did that one. I don't think it was us. And we had come in and they had hired Dion Johnstone to play.
Brilliant
Chaka.
physical
he's
actor.
Great. Really beautiful guy. He's a wonderful performer. And he kind of embodied that character really well. So he gave us a really good inspiration on the design of him because he was supposed to be kind of like a teenager. Like a teenage Unis. And there was a bunch of other Unis, I think, in that episode too. But I think that was our first, this new edition, because like whatever was done years ago, there was a long break before we saw the Unis again. And these were kind of that new brand of Unis. And Peter DeLuise directed the hell out of it.
In a situation like that, I've been in situations where I've had like my head encased in various things for when we were filming the photography for a lot of the Stargate merchandise and costumes over at PropWorks. And it shocked me how quickly my head heated up when it was completely encased in Jaffa armor. And it was like, whoa, I cannot imagine what it would be like for someone like Dion Johnstone or Alex Zahara later on, who came in to play a number of these roles, to be in that all day long.
Yeah, well, yeah, total kudos to Dan Payne and
Dan Payne,
and Dion,
saint among men.
There was, I mean, there's been a variety of actors that, you know, we actually have a list of actors that can do this stuff really well. Not just, you know, endure it, which of course is kind of a zen, but also to kind of bring life to it. They really, you know, like, I don't know how much prosthetics Dan Payne wants to do anymore, or Alex, but we occasionally hook up with them and we have a kid show that we produce called Aliens Ate My Homework and Stole My Body. And we kind of wanted those guys to be there was actually quite a bit of Stargate installed in that show. But I begged and pleaded those guys to be our alien characters, just because I know that they would not only be able to endure it, but be able to perform through it.
Correct. They're going to give you the performance you want.
Yeah. So, you know, I certainly can't say it's not uncomfortable. Those guys really manage their emotions about it. But it's certainly, foam latex prosthetics are a lot easier than, say, like a big helmet that has no air escaping it or something like that. So there's been a couple actors. Chris Heyerdahl is another one.
Yes.
Who's done a few prosthetics for us. Anyway, they're just genius actors that have such control of their craft that they can understand their new face and work it, perform it. You know, after you apply all this makeup on these people, you kind of learn, you know, whether or not they're going to be able to bring it out. And sometimes you see actors in front of the mirrors with their new faces, you know, like really kind of looking for their best faces, which is kind of fun when it really works together. So those folks are great.
I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of the technology, the makeup over the course of your career. You know, we've gone far from rubber heads, you know, like you were saying, foam latex and everything else. You want to free up, I'm sure, to free up the actor as much as possible to give the most articulate performance here, if you can. Because, I mean, at the core of science fiction and horror and everything else, it's nothing if it's not about humanity and the human nature of whatever kind of critter it is. Because that's how we as audiences go, ugh, you know, we identify something.
You really have to kind of connect with something on the screen if you're going to watch a show and be engaged in it. So Correct. You can actually ride along with those characters. So if they're just like a big blob, or I don't know, something CG, it's really hard to get any soul out of them.
Exactly. Though, I mean, I think that, you know, Seth MacFarlane has done a pretty reasonable job with Yaphet on the Orville, but still, you know, it's nice to have a critter in there somewhere. But tell us about about watching that makeup evolve so that it creates, you know, a better experience for the actors over the years, and more
makeup technology.
And taking a fraction of the time to apply it as opposed to before, and that comes out of repetition as well.
Yeah, and technology and you know, methodology. It's certainly changed throughout my career. I mean, I came in and it was pretty much foam latex and fiberglass was kind of everything. And there wasn't silicones and there wasn't like a lot of rubber molds or anything like that. And nowadays, you know, we still use foam latex and we still use, you know, fiberglass and items like that. But we're a lot more dialed into a more fleshy silicone substance for prosthetics. If we're going to do like an age makeup, you know, we wouldn't do that in foam latex these days. It was like a big monster head that had a lot of dense paint on it, then yeah, maybe it's foam latex. So there's all sorts of new methodologies to kind of create this work. We can scan actors instead of life cast them. We can generate even molds out of our, you know, 3D printing. So it's fun to kind of experience the transformation of prosthetics over the years, and hopefully be one of the leaders of that.
I did not realize you can scan an actor now instead of doing a live cast.
Yeah, it's
like, well, duh, David. You know, that makes a lot of sense. That's really come far. Holy cow!
Yeah, it's you know, let's see. We started photogramming. It was in Hemlock Grove. We started photogramming. We had a We didn't quite have a Toronto shop yet during then. We had an LA shop, we had a Vancouver shop. And to deal with the location issue, we started photogramming some of the actors, this is almost 10 years ago. And we had a great team in the LA shop that would just kind of put it all together and create our 3D models. Nowadays, scanning's got a lot better. It's easier to have like a portable scanner. My buddy Louie on the Saturday Night Live, he actually uses that quite a bit to shorten up his pipeline, because he has to make prosthetics in like 4 days or 3 days or something. And so he's been using scanning and printing quite a bit. There's a few other artists that are really kind of making it a part of their work. We are as well. We did quite a bit of that on the Child's Play movie, the recent Child's Play Chucky sequel. The hands on Chucky were so small that it was just easier for us to do it digitally, print digital molds and make digital armatures and all that stuff. So we have a ways to go to really kind of make it as common as, say, like face casting. But we definitely are using it, and it helps quite a bit.
Is there a desire to achieve as much practically in camera as possible, rather than to say, well, you know what, in order to get this to work, we're just like with Chucky's hands, we're going to have to achieve this digitally? Is there kind of like a not let down is not the word that I want when you have to achieve something digitally, but I mean, I'm sure you would probably agree that 99% of the time achieving stuff in camera is going to be as much more realistic. Or maybe I'm wrong.
Well, that's kind of the fun of designing effects. If you've been around long enough to see all sorts of different types of effects like I have, you don't want to just like throw it out with the bathwater. It's like the digital baby and the digital, all that kind of thinking. You want to be able to, take what we've learned over the eons of filmmaking and effects. And, we all kind of have to take what the previous successes were and then stand on those shoulders and so on and so forth.
Correct.
Hopefully making it better looking, more, natural feeling, more believable, better for actors, better for directors. So it's kind of a bit of a, there's quite a few elements to choose from in terms of designing effects. And you have to be pretty experienced to know why and when. And I was just we have a new show that we're doing now, where the visual effects supervisor and we worked together like 10 years ago. And fortunately, we have this like really great handshake together.
Good.
And he and I speak almost the exact same language. And because we know that the assets of one methodology might be the liabilities of the other, and there are ways to kind of mix them so they both support each other. The nice thing about practical effects is it looks real because it is real. It looks organically there because it actually is organically there. The negative, if you want to look at it this way for a particular situation, is that it's actually there. Though you can't bend, physics. You have to deal with an object that's physically there. So you need to kind of find when and where to use what. The other thing that kind of evolved probably out of the Falling Skies experience is we really had to fight for some of those gags to be practical, because we knew that we would be able to deliver something better. Probably because of, experience on this show, Star Trek First Contact, when we had Alice come down and Head and Shoulders,
yes,
plugs in and all that. We really fought for that one too, to be practical, or a lot of it mostly, led practically, because we knew that having Spiner and Alice acting in the same room together was going to be magic. And if we shot Alice like 3 months later from Brent and comped her in, it wouldn't have been the same thing. And so you need to know when and where to do it. Like on Falling Skies, like I was saying, we had Doug Jones, the great Doug Jones, in a prosthetic character called Cochise. And we really pushed it to another level there, where we had him show up in a full prosthetic, where he could move the mouth and the head and all that, but his eyes were like way out here, and he had to see through these like little slots in his nose. And then we went back and we enhanced his performance, actually using his voice track to drive a lot of the eyebrows and all that stuff. And it really came up with a whole new way of doing prosthetics and achieving things like that for television, because television usually doesn't have a lot of time to do 3D characters. And we knew eventually it was going to either Cochise was going to disappear or he was going to be kind of marginal. And, you know, for a character to really take us through a show, you know, like a Cochise or anything like that, you have to really believe it. You have to believe the thing has soul. You have to believe that he's really, you know, there. You want something that the other actors can believe in and be blocked with. You know, directors, they don't like blocking with, you know, tennis balls on a C-stand. It's so much better to have something there.
Something with life and some kind of an expression. Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't work for everything, but there's a lot of cases where the practical digital handshake can work, and knowing the where and the when is really kind of the trick to it. Because there isn't really a base set of rules. There's a lot of guidelines, but the whole point is to kind of like make something fresh and surprising.
I would imagine, again, going back to the more lead time that you have in pre-production, the better off that's going to be.
Yeah, which, you know, I'll be saying that until I'm dead, because you never have enough time. You know?
But also at the same time, do you want your director to still have the freedom of coming up to you on set and saying, I've got this idea. Do you think we could achieve this, or would this completely derail the whole thing?
No, absolutely. You know? That's why you got to have this knowledge base, you know, because I used to do Tales from the Crypt, and and Bob Zemeckis used to do a bunch of those. And Bob is notorious for doing exactly what you just said. You know, coming up to you on set going like, I got an idea. You know, you don't want to say no to Bob Zemeckis.
No, you want to make him happy.
Right. So you kind of, you have to make sure that you're ready for anything. I mean, you know, you design and prep as best you can, and then you got to be ready for rain. You got to be ready for actors not showing up, or, you know, any possible combination of madness can happen, which will derail plans. But that's kind of what the whole gig is being prepared, having a B plan, and you know, rolling with it if you have to.
Did your team do the Crypt Keeper puppet?
No, that was Kevin Yeager and his team. We did the makeup effects we probably did the most episodes in makeup effects. There was quite a few seasons in there that we were just the solid go-to prosthetics house. But like in the beginning, there was a couple other artists. I actually did the Crypt set from the very beginning. I sculpted that whole damn thing. And I kept going to the producers like, I'm not a sculptor of rocks and stuff. I just happen to do this, you know.
Right.
I actually do prosthetic effects. You guys should hire us for prosthetic.
I'm sure they're like, you're fine. Keep going.
Yeah.
Right?
It took a couple seasons for them to finally go, oh, you do prosthetic effects? Okay, well, this one. And so then we started doing that, and eventually we became the go-to Tales of the Crypt effects guys, and we did the first movie, Demon Knight, and we kind of patched up the second movie, Bordello of Blood, and then blah, 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 blah.
The aging effects. We talked about it a little bit with a project that you weren't on. I'd like to talk about it with a little bit of project that you were. It can be really hit and miss. You can tell when it's done well, and other times it's like, I guess that works. You know, I mean, the process of aging characters like the SG-1 team in Unending, you know, last episode of the series, what were some of the techniques that were used then? Are those the same techniques that are used now? I've seen like these kind of like, I don't know if it's like a spray on or whatever, but like they like stretch the face and apply stuff and then let it go back into place. And it's like you're watching Bob Ross create something out of nothing. It's a magic trick, you know, just bringing this stuff to life.
Some phases. Yeah, it works fine in some phases. That's old age stipple you're talking about.
Okay.
What is the episode you're talking about?
It was called Unending, and it was the final episode of Stargate SG-1. My understanding was that you guys were responsible for aging the SG-1 team.
We have aged some of the team. I'm trying to remember that episode, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, because they were all stuck on board the spaceship together for 50 years, and they progressively aged.
Mind is a horrible thing to waste.
Okay. No, it's fine.
Well, nowadays, I mean, I'm presuming from back then it would either been gelatin or foam latex. Both are materials that we really don't use anymore for aging.
Okay.
Nowadays, we do still use stipple, which comes in all sorts of formulations. We still do prosthetics. We usually do them out of like a silicone material for like an aging, so they're very natural feeling and moving. They look translucent because they actually are translucent. That's kind of a standard makeup effects trick. If you're a makeup effects artist, you kind of need to be able to do the aging. And so we've done quite a bit of them. I gotta say, I don't remember that episode, but maybe.
No, it's okay.
We did quite a few on Atlantis. Anyway, but yeah, it's usually life cast, sculpture, a concept design in there somehow to design what this character might look like, and then hair pieces and all that. It's I mean, these days that's kind of makeup effects 101 is be able to do that. At least you better be able to do a good age makeup.
Understood. Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of those where it's like, we all know what our grandparents look like. We know what older people look like. And we're seeing characters, actors that we're very familiar with physically. And, when you transform them, some people are going to buy it and some people just aren't. And it's amazing to watch. I remember Tori Higginson talking about, in a season 1 episode called Before I Sleep, she wakes up in a stasis chamber. And she remembers having the makeup applied. And when she looked in the mirror, she saw her grandma.
Yeah, I did that one. I know I did that one. The story was amazing. Yeah, that was kind of a funny moment for her. She was one of the actresses that looked in front of the mirror and just played with it for a while, which was really cool. And she got some really great expressions. One of the tricks to doing film aging is kind of what you just mentioned. The actor, the producer, the director, they usually want a sense of the actor in the makeup. And as you probably know, just from experiencing life, people don't really look like themselves, 40 years down the line. Sometimes they might just have a nose that you are familiar or something like that. So it's tricky to remain believable in aging because everybody wants to age beautifully.
Right.
They don't want to get, well, it's true. They don't want their jawline down here and their big waddle, it's just part of life.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is we all age, and some people do it beautifully. Most people, they drink garbage and they smoke and they eat crap food.
Abuse their bodies, yeah.
Right. And their bodies show it. So, it's kind of this weird little balance. So whenever I'm doing concepts of age makeups, I'm always trying to imagine what that character would live through those times. Tori's character, I didn't expect her to be doing drugs or drinking garbage or something like that. So I tried to do her gracefully.
Yeah, she was just in a stasis pod. She's aging extremely slowly, and
beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah.
And other characters, you want to kind of really play up that stuff and really kind of show some of the results of their choices. So it's really funny. I can look at people and see where they're going to age and how they're going to age. And it's just something after doing so much aging design over the years, you just see it after a while. You just see what's going to be believably their situation in 40 or 50 years.
It's the human form, and gravity is constant. So.
Yeah. And their choices are going to be evidenced on their face, So it sucks when you're dating someone and you look across the table and you just go, oh shit. I just photoshopped your face. Damn it! Why did I do that?
You want to see how someone ages? Look at their look at their parents.
Not always true. Actually,
not always true.
Not always true. No. It's usually kind of the result of life choices.
Yeah.
We all make dumb decisions. None of us want to eat salads.
That's true. That's a fair point. Did you? I'm trying to look through the information that I have here. Were you involved with the Wraith makeup?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So actually, one of the Wraith was even named after me. There's a Wraith called Todd.
Todd, that's correct. Yeah,
that was
Chris Heyerdahl's character.
Yes.
I didn't know he was named after you. That's a great trivia.
I have never had any of the writers come up and say, "Hey, we named him after you." But it was I was kind of a permanent staple there for a while, and then all of a sudden, who's going to name it Wraith Todd? So I guess it was an inside joke.
Yeah, Shepard did. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. And he was the most prominent on the series. Yeah, Chris Heyerdahl was extraordinary as that character. And Andy Frizzell, really, going back to the pilot.
Yeah.
Dan Payne was in. I've got one of the soldiers in my house. That it's an extraordinary piece of makeup. What you guys did with James Robbins' designs.
Yeah.
And we
yeah,
talked
James-
about this. He creates them and then you will them into solid reality, which is just an extraordinary achievement. It's kind of mind-bending, you know, that he can
Well, you
think
just
it
gotta-
and you guys can just, oh, well, we'll have that in a few weeks.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. No, that was quite a little Wraith factory there for a while.
Absolutely.
Chris Heyerdahl has a little Kiss makeup concept.
Yes, he does.
It's our little, because I loved
tattoo.
Kiss growing up. Yeah. So we were doing a lot of tattoos on those things, and I must have been working too long because I was designing like so much stuff at the time, and just crazy schedules. And then all of a sudden we ended up with a Kiss tattoo on one of them. Like, oh, hope nobody notices.
And it's another example because Andy has talked at length about how, you know, when she first did it, I mean, especially for Rising, she had gloves that she would put her hands in. So those weren't actually her fingers. Right. And, you know, by the end of it, that had changed. The makeup they were doing something other than like a foam latex. My understanding was at the start of it. And you guys had moved later into other things that were just quicker and easier for her to emote and express herself with.
Yeah, the original ones were like an early form of silicone makeups.
Okay.
Just as silicone makeups were really starting to become on the scene, a lot of development still had to be done. And so we made the faces very translucent because, you know, take advantage of the material. And her gloves were actually made out of this thermoplastic shit that we actually made out of sex toys.
Wow.
So Andy was wearing sex toys on me.
Any port in a storm.
Andy's great. She was another one of those actresses or actors and actresses that can really pull it through the makeup. And she really had such a presence in that thing. It was really, really fun to watch.
What do you see on the horizon in terms of this technology evolving in all of its various forms? Not just the tech, but the methodology, like you said, you know, that you are most excited about. That's in development, that you're seeing people use, or that's, you know, a theoretical material that's coming out, you know, that or maybe more use with the digital space in terms of hybridizing what's on set and what exists in the makeup space and in the digital space.
Yeah, you just answered it. All of that stuff is what we've got our focus on. I mean, we like to be a studio that has more options, you know, than anybody else. So the mixing of practical and digital is a lot of fun, and there's really nobody else that does it like we do.
There you go.
So that's great. Pushing more into, you know, scanning and 3D printing is also something that we're doing. You know, eventually we'll really kind of push that. You know, like there's a great studio in the Valley down in California called Legacy that has a really amazing digital print department, and you know, they don't even do molds much anymore. And so that's something that we need to push into. I think I mentioned before we hopped on, we're starting to make our own movies, or we have been making our own movies for a while, and we're starting to kind of do a lot more of that, which to me is really what the point of all this is. You know, like I said earlier, not the rubber nose making, but I always wanted to do more than just, you know, prosthetics. I wanted to create characters, and I wanted to create moments in cinema if we could. And so now we're kind of like pushing even beyond. We want to make cinema, period. So we have our own little production situation developing, or I should say developed. We've actually done quite a few, like I mentioned, the Aliens Ate My Homework series, Psycho Gorman's MastersFX project, co-production. There's quite a few of these that we're playing with, that we're finding a lot of fun, and, you know, we can do them unlike anybody else. So it's pretty cool.
So the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I guess. Or, you know, we're talking about Stargate here. It's even beyond the sky. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's SG-4. You know, hopefully Brad's got something cooking. So
I think it's Brad's birthday today, actually. Happy birthday, Brad, if you're out there. Yeah, I think Brad is having his birthday today. I think he's 27.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think it's 26.
You're 26?
Yeah, I think he's 26. Yeah. Happy birthday, Brad Wright. I'll be darned. Yeah.
There you go.
And it's a significant one. If you're looking at the date, good for him.
Oh, fantastic. Is he 30?
Times 2. Yeah. So The absolutely, Brad. Happy birthday. You know, one of the people who is absolutely making all this, you know, possible for us to talk about years later. Just extent that it would not be possible without the people like Brad Wright.
Yep.
The one of the things that I think is absolutely mind blowing to watch was The Mandalorian and the volume, that LED light.
Oh, you're talking to digital production stuff? Yeah, that's fantastic.
Just mind blowing. If nothing else, get rid of that friggin' green screen and have an actual reflection of the surrounding light on the characters' faces that is accurate of the space that is intended.
Well, real time in general is definitely something that's arrived, and you know, quantum computing and all this stuff. I mean, we're going to see some amazing stuff the next 10 years, and it's, you know, that's kind of some of the fun, is to try to guess where this is going to go and try to stay ahead of it. But yeah, digital production is probably something that a lot of people aren't quite aware of. I think Mandalorian's probably the biggest popular use of it so far. But there's been a lot of other stuff that's done this way. Real fake is another thing that's going to come in and really transform things. So that might take away old age makeups. There's a lot of this stuff coming down the pike that, you know, people always love to develop stuff and, you know, make you know, cinema easier and better. So these are some pretty exciting tools. So,
it's the velocity at which Hollywood has to keep up with the technology that even is available in the hands of consumers. I know they spent so much time working on Tarkin and Leia for like Rogue One, and then I saw a deep fake, you know, like a year ago that, in my opinion, particularly with Carrie, looks better because it's actually her face, you know, and it's just, you're right. I think it's going to be 10 years from now, for good in terms of entertainment and for ill in terms of us questioning reality as consumers with the media and everything else. It's going to be an extraordinary development over the next several years.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting when they have, like, you know, video politicians saying things.
And you know,
you're supposed to believe, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. How can you disprove it when the uncanny valley is just shattered?
I saw it with my own eyes.
Own eyes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, we need to educate people, not just our age, but, you know, new people, young people, how this is really going to kick everybody's ass if we're not careful. You know,
if it's not handled right, we could be in real trouble. So
this is all those science fiction stories that we've been reading forever.
Correct. So many of them are coming to life now. Black Mirror can't keep up with it.
Right. So, you know, we need to be aware of a society where this is going to be a huge part of it. And so our kids need to be aware of it. We need to be aware of it. You know, I don't think it's an unknown concept, you know, like news is BS. It's going to become more BS. So.
Yeah, it's going to be just crazy. I've got a couple of questions from fans for you. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
Teresa MC, are there any particular animals that you study mostly for prosthetics? I guess she's speaking beyond humans.
I study the human animal. That's a good question. Yes, we really try to have a good knowledge of, like, every single critter on the earth if we can. I mean, there are some amazing things on our planet that are great inspiration for making aliens. And they still are somewhat grounded on our planet. I mean, if we just show up with, like, a toaster, for instance, you're not going to really give a shit. You want something that you can identify with and relate with, whether it's a salamander head or whatever. So we do like to look to things that are, you know, natural to our planet, and, you know, steal a paint scheme off a tropical fish, for instance, or sculpt a face that was maybe a newt or a mole. You know, we're always looking for stuff like that to kind of inspire the creativity and, you know, kind of help you can just sit there and draw crazy little lines, which is a lot of fun to do these days with all these, you know, iPads and all that, but you have to kind of make it something that people can connect with one way or the other. Otherwise it just doesn't quite work. So yes, we do look at a lot of different animals. I can't say anybody in particular other than the human animal. We're definitely studying that all the time.
Well, I mean, it's particularly with aliens, I know like the Nakai and Stargate universe, I mean, they're based on a deep sea fish, a translucent fish that everyone is like, who looks at it, it's like, that's not real. Oh, that's a real animal. Okay. Nature's the best guide through geometry and particularly like symmetry, I mean,
Well,
it's
and also that natural chaos, there is a certain chaos to nature, and things aren't symmetrical. We're not, if you put someone down the face and you mirror both sides, they're gonna look like brothers of that person. So, because we're not symmetrical.
That's fair.
Yeah. So there's like a certain natural chaos that makeup effects artists, the good ones, have a touch to. We call it the touch of God. And there's certain artists that, like Dick Smith was a great example. He could just put his touch on it, and it wouldn't be styled. It wouldn't be a designy thing. It would just feel believable. And so many artists have that, even designing the weirdest shit. Steve Wang is a great example. Steve Wang designed the Predator for Stan Winston, he along with Matt Rose. And Steve has this amazing ability to giving things a soul as well as a weight, no matter how bizarre it is. And you always just, his stuff is breathtaking for that reason. There's several artists like that, but he was personal.
Yeah, that's why they're called artists. They imbue things with life. Yeah. Absolutely. Kicks 394. This is a little bit broad. I'm hoping you can narrow it a little bit to the fundamentals. How does the process of bringing an alien creature to life work? Can you scale that a little bit?
Well, the alien creature's parents get together and they have a bottle of wine. And no, I'm kidding. Well, so the way it begins in the film world is, and not everything's the same, of course, because we're weird filmmakers. But we usually get a script, which is just, type on a piece of paper and it describes it. And then we have a meeting and we talk about what we all read, and then we start designing. I'm actually doing this on a show right now, like literally this afternoon. I have to interpret what is in the script, and hopefully it's within the vision of the creators, the creative people. And so that step is concepting. So we do a lot of drawings. I do a lot of hand drawings as well as computer drawings. And they range from like really fast scribbles to just kind of get tone to more detailed drawings. Sometimes we'll even do like a deep dive, kind of a mood board. Like I say, find all these weird creatures that are in the world and just show the director, this, that, maybe a little. Once we kind of get the image done, the concept approved, then it's a matter of figuring out how to actually build it. And I usually like to make the concept even without thinking about how to build it. I like to make just weirdness. And then if someone likes the weirdness, then you go, okay, well then we need to make that part CG or that part practical. Maybe this part's animatronic and that part's a rod. So then we start figuring out those aspects of it, which kind of comes into working it out with camera. Like I was mentioning before, we're doing magic tricks to one eyeball, which is the camera. And we can fool the audience by not showing that part or not showing that part. So that's something I like to do with the director, usually with storyboards, designing gags out. And I usually just pitch a scene that I scribble out at storyboards and see if it's close to what they're thinking. And then we design the effects from there. I have a guy that gets a screwdriver in the jaw coming up in a show. And so I drew all that out to figure out exactly how do we do that part? Right. How does it stay in his chin? They didn't want a fake head. They wanted to do it on the actor. So each, those are like little tricks that we all have to figure out. And then it's, into the actual creation of the prosthetics or the creature, which is sculpt, mold, cast, paint, animatronics, and that whole pipeline.
Wow.
Make sense?
It does. No, it does. Absolutely. I have a specific one from Arnold G asking about Leprechaun 2. That was Warwick Davis, was it not?
Yeah. Yes, but I did not do the Leprechaun makeup. That was Gabe Bartalos who did that.
Okay.
And we worked Leprechaun 2. I never get questions asked about Leprechaun 2.
Welcome to Dial the Gate, Todd.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So we did all the other gags. There's like a skeleton that attacks somebody in that movie. There's,
oh my gosh.
I mean, I think that movie was like, from the 50s. It was a long time. No, I don't know.
I caught it actually in a motel room a year ago. It was on.
Very appropriate.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm sorry. So what was the question on Leprechaun?
Yeah, the work that you did for it,
Oh, okay. Well, it was everything but the Leprechaun. All the makeup effects other than what Gabe did with Warwick. And they were kind of on their own little corner in their own trailer and having a lot of fun. And we were, just making our stuff. That was shot in San Fernando Valley of LA back when we had our LA shot. So yeah, I would have to see it again to see what the hell we did on it, but I know there's a lot of makeup effects gags.
Those horror films, man.
At that time we were making a lot of that. I think that was like a Trimark film. I don't even know.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But they were a lot of. It was just that kind of time where we were making a lot of these low to medium low budget films and just pumping them out for, I guess, video, because some of that stuff didn't get screened.
Yeah.
So
like Tremors 10 now, or
exactly.
Just keep on rolling.
I love that there's still fans of Leprechaun 2.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
I am interested in your two more. I'm interested in your answer for this one. I think this is fascinating. Jet Ison wants to know, has your knowledge of prosthetics to rig up, a hand, a foot, arm, ever been applied? Have you ever been consulted for actual people, for like amputees, military personnel?
Can't talk about that. But yeah, we have done amputee stuff. We've done quite a bit of like subtle little prosthetics. Some of our crew actually did one not too long ago. I think it was an ear on somebody.
For an actual human being?
Yeah, sure. And I've done, I used to do a lot of disguises for, I did Michael Jackson disguises for a while, so you could walk around in the world.
I wouldn't even think about that.
Yeah, Michael, he was having every makeup artist in town do stuff.
Yeah.
And I was working with him with Steve Johnson during Smooth Criminal. Okay. And at one point, Michael asked us if we could do disguise makeups for him, so he could go to his brother's concert or go to the grocery store. And Michael had an entire arsenal of costumes in one of his closets. He had like a fat suit. He had like some gloves. I mean, just like an amazing assortment of stuff that Rick Baker made or Stan Winston made. And so we started doing some of that stuff. And we've done a lot of other stuff that's outside cinema and television. So yes, I don't know. Did I answer that question?
Yes, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
absolutely. The medical advances that are coming now, especially for military personnel who have lost, parts, things like that, to give them a greater mobility in homes and everything else is just extraordinary.
Yeah, Boston Dynamics and all the robotics.
Correct. Yeah, Spot and everything else. You want to talk about some double-edged sword right there. That's right.
Yeah, it's Terminator 12.
Exactly. Final question for you. Kronos Chiron, what advice would you give to novice indie filmmakers who are wanting a crack at this space?
My advice, I mean, I don't know what point you are in your career or amateur development or whatever point you're at. But kind of my advice is sort of, I guess, the same. I like 5-year plans. I like to make a plan. And I usually do them within 5 years, and I literally write it out. I sketch out where I think I'm going to be or where I want to be, and I just try to sort of plot it out. You're always going to be wrong, no matter what you do. If you write tomorrow's plan today, it's not going to be completely perfect. Right. And so if you do like 5 years, you're definitely going to be wrong. But the idea isn't to be accurate. The idea is to plan. And so it's essentially goal making, if you've ever taken a goal making workshop or something like that. So what you want to do is figure out, where you want to be in 5 years. And sometimes it's really hard for people to do that. So what I recommend is to do the exact opposite. Figure out where you don't want to be in 5 years. Figure out that you don't want to be working at the insurance company in 5 years, or you don't want to be in a dead-end job or in a dead-end life if you don't. Really try to think this through. Figure out, if you do have a desire to make films or makeup effects or any part of this craziness, or even just be an artist or a writer, make yourself a set of goals and achieve them. And I like to physically write it down and have it remind me where I should be. It's almost like charting when you're sailing a ship to a location. There's many little points along the way where you might have to adjust, but eventually the goal is sort of the same. And come up with a methodology for yourself to achieve your goals, to make your life happen, because life goes by like that.
Yeah.
And if you don't do this, life will just drag you along. So if you do want to make movies, if you do want to do any of this stuff, just do it. Just freaking do it. But come up with a game plan. Try to figure it out in a time period. I like 5 years, but you can certainly plan out this month. You can certainly plan out 10 years, whatever you want, but figure it out and don't make any excuses. You're in charge of your own life, and just freaking do it. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that.
But it has to start with that. You
kind of need, you can't let anybody else kick you in the pants. You need to kick your own pants. And the best way to do that is goals. Yeah. And like I say, my favorite way of trying to determine goals is to try to determine the anti-goals. I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to, have a shitty car. I don't want to live in a shitty part of town. Whatever it is, if you don't plan for what's around the corner, it's going to hit you in the ass.
Yeah. If you want to be reactionary in your life or proactive, and that can be said for anyone in looking to advance in the industry or not, just in life. I cannot recommend a 5-year plan enough. And the more granular your steps along the way, the more realistic it will be.
Just as long as you're not going to damage yourself with it. I mean, you just have to keep in mind every step of the way, this is to be revised. None of this is real. This is just a game plan that's most likely wrong, that you have to just kind of keep updating. Like, that ship that's going along, or an airplane, that's going from point A to point Z. There's a bunch of little adjustments because a storm cloud came along, or shark, or whatever.
Yeah, things happen.
Shit will come. It will happen. So prepare. I mean, just like winter, storms come all the time.
This is true. So. One of my producers asked me a last-minute question. One of my students recently lost a leg in an accident, and his family is very poor. Does Todd know of an organization that helps people who need prosthetics or anything along those lines that you can advise?
I don't offhand. Okay. I know that on Instagram, I follow #prosthetic, and I know that a ton of that is medical prosthetics. Okay. I would start, networking like that. Here's a great example. Your goal is to get a prosthetic. You're here. What are the points between here and there that have to be achieved? And so to me, it sounds like making contact with a variety of different prosthetic, service companies. I don't do those kind of prosthetics. I don't do medical prosthetics like legs and stuff like that. So I would first look into that. I knew a guy that worked at a VA hospital in San Francisco years ago that used to make the greatest eyeballs for me.
Wow.
But there are places throughout, I don't know where this person is, but throughout the States, throughout Canada, that have, prosthetic materials and ways to make them. And I would reach out to them and see if there's some way to do it.
Perfect. Todd, this has been terrific and fascinating and nuanced, all of the above. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories.
Well, I'm glad that we got the right time zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was so afraid I missed it. I'm like,
no,
oh my God.
There's something wrong with Google in Arizona because we're half of the year we're in one time zone, the other half we're in another. But I'm glad we made it work.
Yeah, me too. So very nice talking with you, and hopefully everybody listening got something out of it.
I do appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. You take care of yourself. Bye-bye now.
Take it easy.
Todd Masters of MastersFX, Makeups and Prosthetics Maestro. You're listening and watching, or both, or not, well, one or the other, to Dial the Gates. I've got, I think, one question for me here. Kicks 394. Is there a process or routine that you go through when you prepare for an interview? It depends on who it is. So basic, primarily, especially with this show, the intent from day one was to be a legacy archive for the franchise. And with each episode, I wanted to cover a certain piece. Initially, for the first episodes that everyone appears in, it's much of a broader introduction in the event that we don't get them back. Some of them, is definitely designed to be a one-off. Unless something else comes along, again, that's has, additional reason for them to return, but sometimes one episode really, really covers it, really says it all. And so I try to hit at least 35-40% of the show about them, and 60-65% of the show about their relationship with Stargate specifically. Sue-Ann Braun, her Hathor host show, she spends a week or two researching the individual that she's going to have on. I do very little of that because it's a Stargate related show, and all that information, 90% of it is in my brain already. And I just need to go to internet resources to make sure that my information, what I'm thinking of, is still correct, and anything that I've potentially missed. I think that that generally strikes a pretty good balance, because it's these episodes, something like Hathor host is much more about the person that she has on, whereas like with Dial the Gate, it's the relationship of that person with Stargate. So the answer is, largely, I don't even prepare a lot of the questions in advance. A lot of the times, particularly if it's someone that I have never spoken with before, I will ask them if they want questions in advance. And oftentimes the actors say no. Like with Christopher Judge, he never give that man a question in advance. He doesn't want it. He likes being surprised. And he likes being put in a corner that he has to work himself out of. That's just who he is as a person. One of these days we will have him on. So, but we're working on that. So yeah, that's pretty much the answer to the question. Technically, on my side, I have to build up all of the title and end cards. I have to promote the show with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. That usually, that process usually takes a couple of hours every single week. The scheduling is a bitch. That is a tough one, because I may send out 10 invites, 5 of which will respond, and 4 of which will be a yes, 3 of which will be a yes, somewhere around there. So there's a lot that goes into the work, but into the process of preparing to have them on. Speaking of, we have next week. I do have interviews that are in the works. I'm a little behind right now in terms of scheduling, but I'm pretty sure I have 2 scheduled for next weekend. I do have a Stargate Universe cast member who has agreed to come on, someone I have not actually sat down and interviewed since before the show actually aired. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with him again. And then someone else who is no stranger to Unos and Super Soldier makeup, and is someone that may hold the what am I trying to say? The record. In fact, I'm pretty sure holds the record for the most appearances in Stargate in terms of the different characters that he's played, if you can figure out who that is. But he's basically said yes as well. And until we get I've got need to sit down and organize those times, but those are going to be coming up. Rachel Luttrell has also agreed to a second appearance. I'm trying to reach out to Paul McGillian right now to bring him back as well. So those are the things that are really in the popper right now and really are happening. We have t-shirts. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. But if you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages and a variety of sizes and colors at Redbubble. Checkout is fast and easy, and you can even use your Amazon or PayPal account. Just visit dialthegate.redbubble.com, and thank you for your support. That's all we've got this week. Next weekend, keep an eye on dialthegate.com for those schedules to be posted, and we'll keep that moving. My thanks to Tracy, Keith, Jeremy, Reese, Anthony, Summer, Linda, Gategabber, Fury, Jennifer Kirby. These are the people who are responsible for making this show come to life. Could not do it without them. My name is David Reed. For Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in. Next week, we will be seeing, we'll be seeing you again. I'll get the schedule posted on dialthegate.com. We'll get the live segments ready to go on youtube.com/dialthegate, and we'll see you on the other side.